preservation of natural resources is a hot topic, no matter where you go. On today's episode of The Lunch Counter, we look at water conservation from a Kootenay perspective.
I'm Suzanne Fordyce. I'm the City of Castlegar's Water Smart Ambassador for the summer of 2012. And I believe that public awareness is key to water conservation in our area.
My name is Rob McCrae and I'm an instructor at Selkirk College, and I believe the economy is a fully owned subsidiary of the environment.
My name's Randy Jensen. I'm a homeowner. I live in rural Nelson, and I have concerns about public policy when it comes to water conservation, as opposed to the impact that I can make at a personal level.
Do you think that we need to conserve water in the Kootenays, and why? Or why not?
I think you always need to conserve water. You always need to be conscious of how much water you're drinking or using. Not drinking, you should drink lots of water.
I think we need to conserve water wherever we are and be conscious about how much water we are using. When you brush your teeth and stuff, turn off the tap while you're brushing. I love having showers. I'm not really a bath person. I think that water is such a valuable resource that we need to be conscious of it, not just so that we make sure we make the money with the dams and stuff like that, but also so we have water for our children and our children and our children as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, water is a precious resource, so it's something you absolutely have to look after, so it's very important to try to conserve it as much as possible.
We have the highest water consumption rates in the world in British Columbia, and particularly in this area, at about 1,000 liters per person per day. And the United Nations and other organizations have suggested that we need about 50 liters per person per day for, good health. And we use water wastefully. We're getting better, but we can find examples where people will put a sprinkler on their roof in the summertime for air conditioning, and they'll just let it run. And so the sprinkler's on the roof and it cools the house down indirectly. It's very inefficient cooling, but we use it very, very inefficiently.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen that recently, but I do remember seeing that as a child. So what are we... I don't think everyone's putting sprinklers on the roof. What are our behaviors around here that we're using so much?
Garden irrigation, if you look at water consumption by municipality, it's at this rate, and then in the summer it spikes like that. And so it's garden
Almost
irrigation.
Double.
Yeah.
Almost double.
But what about your vegetables and things? I mean, I want to be able to use lots of water I'd like to get up in the morning and give my vegetables.
In a perfect world, if you wanted to irrigate your garden, it would be best to have a direct line from the river, because water that we use to drink has been treated. So it's expensive. The municipality's got to take water out of the river, it's got to treat it, make it safe to drink, and then we're simply putting it back on the garden. And so that's an unnecessarily expensive water. You could take water right out of a creek, water your garden, and have great vegetables. And so it's that high cost.
So what's that, what would they, say you did have a creek going by in your property, how do you, is there a program that encourages people to do that?
Well, we're starting to do things like, in the wintertime we have snow melt. So if people, when they build their houses, put in a cistern to hold snow melt and rainwater, and then you watered your garden with that cistern, rather than city water, that would be much more effective. But if if we had bylaws that said when you build your house you should have a rainwater or stormwater recovery system, that would be a good thing, I think, in terms of water conservation. But it steps back, why do we want to bother conserving water?
It's very important. Conserving water is, we need it for living, and it's not going to be here forever.
Water is one of our greatest resources, and when you can get clean, good water, definitely conserve it and use it.
It's a valuable resource, and if we just kind of misuse it, and it'll be gone.
I'm guilty of watering my lawn pretty frequently, so I would say that we probably don't need to be too concerned about it. I'm sure the watersheds and all the extra water that we had this year that was evident by the river levels should provide everything we need. I think they're thinking about trying to meter the water usage downtown, and I'm sure that's just another way to find a little tax base or a little tax grab, but I don't think that we have a shortage of water here.
The big ways in Castlegar of wasting water is, we think, and it makes sense, that most of it goes into sprinkling lawns. So, that's why it's my job to go around and talk to people about how much water their lawns actually need, and to just, a lot of people have these irrigation timers and they think, no problem, I've got my system on a timer, that's pretty water-wise, but they don't know how to run their timers, they don't know about the seasonal adjust. So I go in and just look at their timers and make sure that it's not running for an hour when it needs to be running for 20 minutes. That's a common thing. Each zone is an hour long. Provide a rain sensor so that if it is raining, it automatically shuts off, because not everybody knows how to turn off the timer, or they just leave it on thinking, I'm just going to leave it. It's going to stop raining and get sunny again. Well, the rain sensor makes it easy.
I didn't know there was such a thing. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So the other thing is right now, because because the town isn't actively metered, there is no actual data on where the water is going. So that's one of the reasons why they're putting the meters on houses, so they know where the water is going. They can follow its route. They can make sure that this huge amount of water Castlegar is using isn't coming from a leak in the pipe in the infrastructure, and if it is, then they can be accountable for that, and it'll make more sense for them to spend the tax dollars to go searching for the leaks.
So if everyone gets water metered, what about the farmers? Do they have to pay for as much per capita or whatever, that prorating?
I don't know exactly, but it's different.
Yeah, there'll be different. It'll be different for farmers and for industry. Celgar uses a huge amount of water relative to the city. Probably more. Celgar uses more water than the entire city of Castlegar for their industry. So there would be different rates for different applications. But coming back to your point, watering lawns is clearly a huge consumption of water, and people don't understand that grass naturally goes brown towards the end of the summer, and trying to keep it green shortens its life. It's trying to go to sleep and prepare itself for winter, and by trying to fertilize it and water it late in the summer, it's trying to get dormant and ready for the winter, and you're trying to keep it alive, and then the first frost comes along and it causes some damage.
It's the kind of grass too that's grown here. It's not a native grass. Kentucky bluegrass is what the main really green turf grass is, and it takes a lot of water to keep it alive. So.
Yeah, there are fescues. There's native species, red fescue and creeping fescue, things like that are better suited for lawns that don't require as much water. And if you can let clover mix in with it, then you don't have to fertilize it.
So also when you're living rurally, there's the water comes in the tap and then it goes out and it has to be treated too. There's a double.
Yeah, we treat it at both ends. Obviously, we bring it in, it has to be treated to make it safe to drink, and then once we've consumed it, we treat it again at a wastewater treatment plant before we return it to the environment. And both of those things have a cost. That comes back to my original question, which I don't think we really answered. Why do we want to bother conserving? And I think the answer is people don't like to pay taxes. And one way to keep taxes low is to reduce the amount of water that we consume.
And what is the number one way people can make a difference when it comes to water consumption, in your opinion?
Being conscious of using it, thinking about it when you use it.
Use what you need, flush when you need to. Simple things. When you're brushing your teeth, you don't need the water running if you're brushing, only when you rinse. Simple little tactics like that. When you're showering, you can turn it off. Just use what you need, I think, Just don't be wasteful.
Dual flush toilets, sprinkling on your day, your odd days.
Shower head, the low water.
And it's important to know too that the actual treatment facility is designed to accommodate peak demand. which is the highest amount of water the community will run through at any given time. And if that peak demand is in the summertime, which is twice as much as everywhere else because people are keeping their lawns green or whatever, then it's like having to build a mansion to accommodate your family, 50 of your family coming all at the same time for a week. And then having to keep that mansion clean for the entire year, but it's empty. Whereas if you could convince your family to come in 2s or 3s through the entire year, you'd build a much smaller house. It would cost you a lot less money to keep the house going, and you'd say goodbye to the mansion. That's sort of what peak demand looks like.
Yeah.
It's all this water is going through the facility. The facility has to be designed to accommodate that.
Got it.
And if we can lessen that demand, then the facility is smaller. It's a smaller footprint, and it's a lot less tax dollars go into that.
Yeah, I can give you another example along those lines. There's a city back in Ontario, a fairly large city, and it was growing, so there was more population, and everybody was using, their 600 liters per person per day. And they had 2 options. They could either increase supply, and that means building more dams and more reservoirs and drilling more wells and more water treatment plants, and that's very expensive, and they were looking at about $14 million for all that stuff. Or they could convince people to go from 600 liters a day to 500 liters a day per person. And that was going to cost, that was going to cost about $1 million. So $14 million versus $1 million. And so what they did is they went around to all these people in the city and they replaced, free of charge, their shower heads. And they put in water conserving shower hoods. And then they replaced the old toilets that were, 5 gallons per flush to, 1.5 liters per flush. And nobody noticed the difference. Everybody was still getting clean in the shower. And a few little changes, and they saved $14 million in expanding supply by reducing demand. And so it really is a money thing. I think for most people, they don't care about the environment. But if they can see that water conservation can significantly lower their taxes, they're going to go for it.